The first thing Matthew Cole noticed was the blood on the leaves, dark and out of place against the early autumn gold of the forest floor, and in that moment his heart dropped in a way it hadn't since the night he buried his wife and realized he was truly alone in the world. The woods outside Pine Ridge, Oregon, were usually quiet and forgiving, a place where he walked to clear his head after long days of trying and failing to keep his life together. But that morning, the silence felt heavy, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath around something broken and forgotten. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small moment can change a life forever, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Matthew was 39, a single father raising his 8-year-old son, Noah, in a small rented house that smelled faintly of old wood and instant coffee. Life had not turned out the way he once prayed it would. After his wife Rebecca passed away from a sudden illness 3 years earlier, the weight of responsibility pressed into him every day like a constant ache. He worked nights at a warehouse in Eugene and picked up odd jobs during the day whenever he could, all while trying to be both mother and father to a boy who still sometimes asked why God had taken his mom. The question haunted Matthew because he had no answer that didn't hurt. That morning, he was walking the narrow trail before heading to a roofing job, trying to gather enough calm to face another exhausting day. That was when he saw her. A woman lay slumped against a fallen tree, her expensive coat torn, one leg bent at an unnatural angle, her breathing shallow and uneven. Her face was pale beneath strands of dark blonde hair matted with dirt and blood. She did not belong in these woods, not like this, and Matthew felt a cold fear settle in his chest. For a brief, shameful second, he hesitated. Helping her meant delays, questions, maybe trouble. He could not afford to miss work. He could not afford anything anymore. Bills were stacked on his kitchen counter, and eviction notices had started arriving with disturbing regularity. Yet as he stood there, memories of Rebecca flooded him, of her gentle insistence that kindness mattered even when it cost something. He knelt beside the woman, checked her pulse, and whispered a prayer he hadn't realized he still knew by heart. The woman's name, he would later learn, was Grace Whitmore. At that moment, she was just another human being bleeding in the woods. Matthew tore a strip from his flannel shirt to press against the wound on her head, steadying his shaking hands. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused and frightened. Instead of asking who she was or how this could help him, Matthew leaned close and spoke softly, telling her she was not alone, that he was going to stay, that help was coming. Those words, spoken without calculation or expectation, carried more power than he could ever imagine. The hours that followed blurred together. Emergency services arrived, drawn by Matthew's frantic call and his precise directions. He rode with her in the ambulance because he refused to leave until he knew she would live. At the hospital in Bend, doctors rushed her into surgery. Matthew sat alone in the waiting room, his work boots muddy on the polished floor, wondering how he would explain being late again and whether this small act of decency would finally be the one that broke him. Grace survived. She had fractured her leg, suffered a concussion, and lost a frightening amount of blood, but she lived. Matthew left before she woke, scribbling his name and number on a scrap of paper he gave to a nurse, not expecting anything to come of it. He returned to his life, to Noah's tired smile after school, to the grind that never seemed to ease. Days passed, then weeks. Winter crept in, cold and relentless, and Matthew's situation worsened. The warehouse cut hours. The roofing job ended. One night, after putting Noah to bed, Matthew sat alone at the kitchen table, head in his hands, whispering prayers that felt like they were bouncing off the ceiling. Grace Whitmore woke up in a private hospital room surrounded by quiet efficiency and worried faces. As memories returned, so did the image of a tired man in a flannel shirt kneeling beside her in the woods, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Grace was not just any woman. She was the CEO of a major real estate development firm based in Seattle, a billionaire known for sharp instincts and even sharper boundaries. She had been hiking alone to escape the pressure of boardrooms and headlines when she slipped down a ravine and disappeared from the world she controlled so well. As she recovered, she asked about the man who found her. When she learned he had left without asking for anything, something shifted inside her. Grace had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from her, who calculated every word for advantage. Matthew Cole had offered only presence and compassion. It unsettled her in the best possible way. Weeks later, Matthew received a call he almost ignored, assuming it was another debt collector. When he finally listened to the voicemail, his breath caught. Grace asked to meet him, to thank him properly. They met at a modest cafe in Eugene. Matthew felt out of place in his worn jacket, but Grace greeted him with a sincerity that cut through the difference in their worlds. She listened as he spoke about Noah, about Rebecca, about the slow erosion of hope that came with doing everything right and still falling behind. Grace did not interrupt. She did not offer empty platitudes. She saw him, truly saw him, and for the first time in years, Matthew felt something loosen in his chest. Grace later told him that what he said in the woods, that he would stay and that she was not alone, had echoed in her mind during the darkest moments of her recovery. Those words reminded her of faith she had buried beneath success and self-reliance. Change did not come overnight, and it did not come as charity. Grace offered Matthew a job managing community housing projects her company was expanding into across Oregon, work rooted in dignity and purpose. She insisted he earn every step, respecting his pride. The position came with stability, health insurance, and hours that allowed him to be present for his son. Matthew accepted, terrified and grateful in equal measure. As months passed, Matthew's life slowly stitched itself back together. Noah smiled more. The house felt warmer, not just because the heating bills were paid, but because hope had returned. Matthew found himself praying again, not just in desperation, but in gratitude. Grace, for her part, found her priorities shifting. She began visiting the housing projects, listening to stories, remembering that wealth meant little if it never touched real lives. Just before the end of this story, take a moment to leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching from or share one moment when kindness changed your life. Your words matter more than you know. The final test came quietly. One evening, Matthew stood alone in the same woods where he had found Grace months earlier, snow dusting the ground. He reflected on how close he had come to walking past her that day, choosing his fear over compassion. The realization humbled him. Grace later joined him there, walking carefully, no longer injured but still marked by the experience. They stood in silence, understanding that some moments were sacred without needing words. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that goodness still exists in unexpected places, please like this video, share it, and stay connected with this channel. Your engagement helps keep these stories alive and reaching others who may be standing at their own crossroads. Matthew Cole never became rich in the way the world measured wealth, but he gained something far greater. He rediscovered his faith, his sense of purpose, and the quiet truth that one act of kindness, offered freely, could ripple outward in ways only God could design. And somewhere in the woods of Oregon, where blood once stained fallen leaves, hope took root and grew, strong enough to carry two broken lives into something whole again.